Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So my question for you is, how do you expect to have a state and have all of these things, um, if not for like taxation and regulation?
Well, you don't need taxes for a state. You need funding, but funding can come from voluntary sources. It doesn't have to be coerced out of people. So,
So what happens if you have
voluntary,
a, sorry, I'm sorry.
just to mention a couple possible ways, voluntary funding through donations is one way. Also, lotteries is another way. Some states have lotteries like Powerball. Those are a couple ways governments can be funded. And the government would be much smaller in my system, so there wouldn't be nearly as much need uh, for money. Like there wouldn't be $1 trillion programs like Social Security or hundreds of $1 billion programs like Medicare, Medicaid, public education, welfare, etc.
Okay. So in this gubernatorial system, what happens if no one interacts with the state? Nobody does the lottery. Nobody gives anything to the state at all.
Then they're going to suffer the consequences of their irrational actions. If people don't want to pay for their own defense, then they're going to suffer consequences. But no one's going to force you to pay. You're just going to have to suffer if you make
Okay.
irrational
So
choices.
do you think that like in this system that like do you think that in systems of government we should generally choose which one will cause the least amount of suffering?
No, that's not how I would approach it. It would be the system of government that protects individual rights.
Like,
Whichever one does that, that's what I would support. But what
okay.
that means, there's a lot packed into that, which we could go into. But just to give you the one line answer, that's how I would think of it.
So are you
If you
okay
want me
with
to,
people suffering as long as like they have individual freedom?
well, I don't like suffering, but I think my system is not going to cause suffering. Actually, I think it's the best. If you really care about suffering, alleviating suffering, I think my system is the best at alleviating suffering and enabling happiness and flourishing. That's what freedom does, I think.
Okay, so let's say we have all the most individual freedoms in the state, right? Again, I brought up a scenario where like nobody interacts with the state, right? What happens if there's no state anymore because no one interacts with it because they like their individual freedom so much they don't want to give up any of their freedoms? Like they're
If no
wow.
one interacts with the state, you mean
Like
by like
nobody gives
supporting
money
it?
to the state. Yeah, like like
Well, then
in that
they're
case
going to
scenario.
suffer.
Well,
They're
yeah.
going to
So what
suffer
I'm
the
trying to say is that your
consequences.
system obviously uses suffering as a mechanism to protect individual freedoms. When I think that there's other systems of government where there's less suffering, right? And you're still allowed individual freedoms, just not as many. And I think we should be using
Okay,
both as a
well,
determination of like what we like as the best system of government. And I don't think a state where you have like no taxes, no regulations, where you can only just donate, it's like elective taxation, right? And if people don't interact with it, then automatically they suffer is kind of like a good system, right? That kind of that still requires like state interaction. And if no state interaction, then you still suffer. So you're kind of requiring state interaction or suffering. It's basically the same idea as forcing prison upon someone who doesn't pay their taxes. So I'm not seeing a difference.
prison is for criminals who inflict harm on other people, like people who rob other people, and that's a different scenario than simply not. Well, I don't know what that's being compared to, but I'm not saying anyone should be thrown in jail who's peaceful. Criminals
No, what I'm
are
saying is that like
not
if you don't
peaceful.
interact with the state, right, then like as if a collective doesn't interact with the state, right, and doesn't give to the state, then they will suffer because other states will probably try to take over that specific territory. They may not get access to like specific defense programs. There might not be a police force anymore. It would just turn into anarchy, right? Which inherently
No,
causes
I don't think
suffering
it
in most
would.
case scenarios. And you're anti-anarchy, right? So if a state doesn't have any funding, right, because nobody interacts with it, right, that would inherently cause suffering, which is the exact same idea as throwing someone in jail for like not paying their taxes, which I'm assuming you're against, right? I mean, the entire idea of jail
Yeah,
is to cause suffering to the individual who committed a crime.
yeah, but it shouldn't be a crime to not give your money to the government, whereas
Yeah,
it
no,
should be a
I'm just saying
crime
like
to
you're
rob other people.
basically no, what I'm saying is that like in your case, in your scenario, you're basically doing the exact same thing as throwing someone in jail for not paying their taxes because like you suffer,
No,
a collective suffers if they don't pay into the state. That's the idea of your system.
no, suffering the consequences of your own actions is different than penalizing somebody else for for coercing other people. Like if let's say you don't eat food, you make the choice, the irrational choice to just starve yourself. You could easily get food, but you don't make the choice to eat food. Well, you're going to suffer through your own faults, right? It's not anybody else's fault but your own. And likewise, if people in society don't choose to pay for their own defense through police or military, then that society is going to suffer. Not because someone else caused them to suffer, but because they weren't willing to pay for their own needs.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that basically you're doing the exact same thing in terms of like if we're just counting suffering in the payment of taxes, you're basically doing the exact same thing as the government throwing someone in jail for paying their taxes. I don't see any moral difference between a government putting someone in jail for not paying their taxes. And in this system, people don't pay their taxes and they suffer. Like, because I mean, you could say that there's like some moral weight to like a government intervening, but I don't really see that in this case scenario.
Well, for one thing, they might not suffer. Like, let's say it's a very peaceful society, and there's no criminals because everyone is just a good person, and so people don't pay any taxes, but they don't suffer due to crime because there are no criminals going around harming people. Now, no one is in
What about
jail,
like
right?
what about
So it's
like
not the same
grape? What
thing.
about like schmurder and like all
Yeah,
these
yeah.
things, right?
Those are
There's
various
still going to be
kinds of crime.
sociopath. Okay, so
What I'm
do you
saying in
think
this
that that's actually
hypothetical.
realistic? Like, I mean, obviously, I'd accept
No,
in that
I'm just
hypothetical
trying.
that
I'm
would be
trying to make
possible.
clear. I'm trying to make
But
clear how not paying taxes is doesn't automatically mean there's going to be suffering. Where it's not like there's some. I'm trying to find a way to show how it's not the same as throwing people in jail, which is a punishment, right? You're
yeah,
not
well, you're
necessarily
punished
being
if you don't pay your taxes.
punished.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, the
If
entire
you
idea
don't
of punishment is to
if you
cause
don't pay
suffering, right? If
taxes,
sorry,
so
if you don't,
if you don't pay any voluntary contributions or buy lottery tickets or whatever, and then but there's no crime because there are no criminals, then you're not suffering. Whereas if you're thrown in jail, you are suffering.
okay, so I mean, yeah, in a real like a perfect society, I guess that your system would work, but we have to accompany for like specific like real world situations. There's always going to be sociopaths. There's always going to be murderers. There's always going to be rapists. There's always going to be these people that just inherently do these crimes that are violent, not for power, not for money, not for anything, but the fact that they just want to because they're sociopathic, or in the case of rapists,
Yeah.
they have sexual attraction that they can't contain,
Yeah,
right?
and that's why all of us who are not sociopaths have a very good reason, a self-interested reason, to pay for our own defense, so we don't have to have those
Yeah.
people running around the streets.
But what I'm saying is that like
So if
if
people
people just
are
always opt
irrational and they
out,
don't pay for their own defense, then they're going to suffer consequences.
yeah,
Just
so
like
it's
if
the
you're
exact same thing
irrational
as
and
like
you
irrationally
don't
not
eat
paying your
food,
taxes in this
you're gonna
society, right?
starve to
Because
death.
it's the exact same thing as like not paying your taxes in our society, right? You just go to jail for it. I don't see anything morally wrong with it.
That's
It's
a
the same
different
idea
kind
as
of
your
punishment.
situation.
That's It's a different kind of punishment. You're punishing yourself in the case where you are not contributing to the government, or you're getting yourself into that position. Whereas taxes is somebody else hauling you off to jail for no crime.
For
You
not
haven't
committing, for
violated
not paying
any.
your taxes.
Yeah, I mean
Well, I mean, it
that
is a crime
shouldn't that
objectively
should.
in our society.
Well, what I'm saying is it shouldn't be. Like forcibly taking
Could
people's
you tell me
wealth who have
why?
been peaceful. Earning money at a job is not a violation of anyone's rights.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it
of
it
course.
violates. Okay, but your some part of your money is your paycheck is taken away by force under threat of jail to the
Mm-hmm.
government. So that's
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. That's not yourself through your irrational decisions who is harming you. That's some third party who has no right to your money, who's interfering with your life, who is
Why don't
punishing
they
you.
have a right to your money?
They're not the ones who earned it. I am.
Okay, so like then you're advocating for Marxism in a sense because like Marxists believe that like the entire idea of the labor theory is that like if you don't pay like if you're working in a specific amount of labor then like a CEO shouldn't be getting the profits of your labor, right? Like there's no reason that the bourgeoisie should be getting the like the money that you earn or the capital that you earn at your job because of your labor. They shouldn't be
All
profiting
right, I'm
from
not
that
a
just because they
Marxist. Are
engaged in
you a
risk.
Marxist?
No, I'm just saying that like using that same like specific like moral valuation of what a theory when a theory is good, right? Like you could advocate for Marxist theory in that sense.
Well, I reject Marxism. I don't know.
Well, you sound like a Marxist, that's what I'm saying. You seem to say
I
like, you know, if you
don't
work then
see
you
how
should
I
be
am.
getting all the money, right? Like
Well, you're
nobody else should be
assuming a
profiting
Marxist
off of your
labor.
money.
You're assuming the Marxist labor theory of value when you say that, though. But I reject that.
Okay, so what do you reject about the Marxist labor theory?
Well, for one thing, I don't think that physical or manual labor is the only source of value, and that other people in the company, like the CEO or the managers, are just parasites. I think I reject that whole picture.
Why?
I think the intellect or the minds is crucial. I mean, we're using technology right now to have this conversation, which is a product of lots of thinking, lots of intellectual work,
Yeah,
and
I agree. And you know, workers made this
that
phone. Workers
they,
came up with the design for it, right? And yet
yeah,
they
but
should be valued the exact
so
same as
that's
like,
like the
you know, a
last.
worker
That's
making the
like
phone as well.
that's it's of course true that the ideas are embodied in physical form, but I think what the Marxists don't recognize is the work, the intellectual part of it. All they appreciate is the physical manual labor part of it, which I think is actually the least crucial part of the process. It's the easiest part. So they
Yeah.
derogate. So I'm not denying that there is a physical component, but I think the Marxists are denying that there's an intellectual component. And they
No,
think the
I don't
CEO
deny
is
that
just a
there's an
parasite.
intellectual point. I don't think that Marxists deny the intellectual component. I just think that they value it as much as they do labor, like manual labor. Like they say, okay, well, how many hours did the person put in to come up with this intellectual idea? That should be valued as much as it's the same amount of hours that are put into making that product, right? There's no real like moral
No,
difference
value
in
is not a
Marxist
function
theory.
of how much time you spend doing something. I could spend all day digging holes in the ground and then filling them back up, but I've created zero value by doing that.
Okay, that's a good point. But I mean, like, yeah, I guess that you shouldn't value it off of time. Yeah, you're right. But in the sense that like, you know, when you're spending when you're doing labor, right? Like it should be valued regardless of the kind of labor. The same. I'm not like arguing, I'm not a Marxist, but I'm arguing like in the sense of like Marxism, like, right? Like you could just like you're kind of justifying that like labor should be valued um based on how much work you put in, right?
No,
Could we
no, I'm not saying it should be valued based on how much work you put in. It should be valued based on how much value you produce. Like if you spend all day working, but the work doesn't create any value, like dig holes in the ground and then you fill them back up, you haven't created any value, even though you've done a lot of work. You've expended a lot of energy and produced zero value.
Okay, well, if we agreed to that, right? Like we agreed that, like, the value of work should come from the value it creates. Yeah, I guess we could agree to that, but you could still like occupy Marxist theory because I mean, the CEO just created this the prototype that all the workers are supposed to be copying, right? But the amount of iPhones that
Well, it's probably not the
build, or
CEO. It's
the
probably
amount
like
of
some
iPhones
inventor.
that, yeah, the amount of iPhones that the inventor made in comparison with the amount that a worker for the company or the factory made would mean that like the factory worker is producing more value to society because they're making tons and tons and tons of iPhones, right? So more people can have access to that technology because, yeah, I guess, yeah, I understand that.
Okay, well, there's different levels of difficulty, like the easiest part is just the assembly of the physical components, but like the physics of the smartphone. I mean, it took genius scientists to figure out the laws of physics. That's much harder than just assembling some physical components, and people
Yeah, I
get
would agree
paid
that like
according to
that would be
how
valuable.
difficult, how how hard it is to replace. It's much harder to find an Isaac Newton than it is to find someone who can assemble the parts of a smartphone. So they can and Isaac Newton could command. I mean, he's living before the days of modern economies, but certain jobs are much hard. Like it's much harder to find a CEO that can run a company successfully than it is to find someone who can assemble parts on an assembly line, which is why the CEO gets paid a lot more. There's a lot more that hangs on the decisions of a CEO. I mean, the CEO can tank a company if he makes bad decisions, but he can also make the company a ton of money if he makes good decisions. But the stakes are much lower for the people on the assembly line,
So do you
so
think
they
that
get paid
risk
less.
should be the
It's not about like
value
who.
of
It's not
labor?
about how many phones they assembled on the assembly line. That's not how value is determined.
Well, I thought that you said value is dependent on how much value it brings to society. Like, I
Well, I
think
don't
that a
think I
worker
define
is
it.
bringing more to
I mean, the
society than the
CEO,
decision that a
the
CEO
CEO
makes.
creates a lot more value for a company than a assembly line worker.
Well, does a CEO make more value for like society as a whole than a worker?
He makes more value for the company.
Okay,
I'm
but
not
what about
sure.
society? I thought that you said that
I,
like you agree that
well, I mean,
like
that's
like I thought that
related.
the discussion was about society, not companies.
The society is related, but I think your job as a CEO is to make money for your shareholders, and that has implications. I think if you're doing well for your shareholders, that probably also means you're creating a lot of value for, like in Apple, right? Steve Jobs is making a ton of money for Apple, but simultaneously there's millions or billions of people around the world who are getting this great product. So there's a correlation, but in terms of like what you think of as a CEO, there's a perspective from which you're primarily focused on your own profits. But of course, that has societal implications.
Do you think that like when a when we value a CEO more than like a worker, that like society flourishes?
When you value a CEO more than a worker,
Yeah. Like, do you
well,
think
I
that
mean,
like a
economically
CEO,
value. I mean,
but like I mean like moral
economically, yeah,
value?
I think it's. I think it's. I mean, that you can value, like if you're the spouse of a worker, you're going to value the worker more than the CEO. But if you just mean like from a random person's perspective in terms of how much they contribute to economy, then I'm going to think that yeah, the CEO contributes. If it's a good CEO, they contribute more value to society than just one worker on an assembly line. On an
Do you
assembly
think
line,
that like workers could like work without a CEO?
yeah, sure, they could.
What about like, do you think that like a
I don't think it would be
CEO
as
could
productive
be a
though in many
CEO
cases.
without like a, do you think that a CEO could be a CEO without the workers?
Well, some people run their own businesses. Like you could be a one man business, and you're in effect the CEO as well as the worker.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I mean, of
the
course,
bigger
but
the
that would
company
still just be
gets,
like that'd still be like a worker run like business, right?
a
They're
worker
the
run
worker and
business.
the CEO at the same time, right? You're just arguing for a co-op at
Why
that
not
point.
call it a Why not call it a
So I mean,
CEO run
yeah.
business?
Well, because if you're still like a worker, I mean, you could say it's like a worker CEO business. I don't know, but still, like that business isn't going to be very large because how are you supposed to make products or provide services as a one man person? And how many people are you going to impact if you're only one person? Not that many.
Well, you can sure have more of an impact on society if you have a larger company and you have a division of labor within the company instead of it all just being done by one person. But I don't think that changes the fact that the CEO contributes greater value than the worker on the assembly line, who is much more easily replaceable.
Well, do you think that like the replaceability of someone makes them less or more valuable? Because I mean, I could
Economically
probably
speaking,
replace a C.
yes.
I could probably just like replace the CEO, and I'm sure that anybody could be a CEO, but I'm not sure anybody could be like
All
a
right.
blue
Well,
collar
you try
worker.
it. You try it. You try to run
Honestly, if you have just basic
a
idea of like economics, I think that being a CEO would be simple.
yeah, yeah. Proof is in the pudding. Go ahead and run a company with thousands or tens of thousands of employees, many
Sure, I'll
levels,
sign
many
up
vice
anytime.
presidents, and show me how easy it is to earn billions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely do that. I just don't think that the amount of work that a CEO puts in equivocates for like 15% of the profits that
And when you
a
succeed, I
company
want you to come
makes.
back here to my TikTok live and make a very large donation out of your billions once you've earned it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, have a great day. It was good talking to
All
you.
right.
You're
All
pretty
right.
smart.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Hmm.